Hi everyone, Tams here. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Tams and I create content that encourages a well-lived creative life. This video is a part 2 video. It is a follow-up to a video I did last week, and I'll post a picture here. Last week I shared how I set out and challenged myself for a whole year to basically transform myself physically, mentally, and spiritually. You guys were so great. Thank you so much for watching and all your lovely comments and feedback. Many of you asked for the resources that I use throughout the year, so this is what this video is going to be. I'm going to literally share with you several books and resources that helped me throughout the entire year. If you have not watched this video that I made last week, I'll post it somewhere in here. I do encourage you to watch that so that these resources aren't confusing to you. I did share how I approached it spiritually, mentally, and physically, so there will be a lot of faith-based resources. If you don't want to watch the entire video, I have a link to my website below that has a list of everything and links and all of that, so feel free to click on that if you want to see all the individual books that I'm going to mention today. All right, let's kick things off. I want to just start quickly with the first book that kind of set me off on this challenge. I believe I read it end of April, early May of last year. It is a faith-based book, and it is the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. He has a lot of videos online if you're interested, but this is a great fast read. It's written in a very simple way, and it really just kind of set things going for me. I really enjoyed it. Now I'm going to talk about the physical, because I know a lot of you just kind of want to know the food and the fitness. Okay, so I'll go ahead and tackle those. All right, so the first resource, the main thing I did last year is I did a lot of research on why I what was causing me not to lose weight and to keep swelling. Just to give you an idea of the shape I was in, I had very high blood pressure. I had trouble like bending over and tying my shoe. I had trouble with balance. Anyway, all of that research led me to a woman who has done a lot in the fitness community, and we're hearing a whole lot about her. Her name is Stacy Sims. Now, she has a book called Roar that you can buy, but she has done so many interviews with some of the top podcasters over the past year. You can find her just about anywhere on YouTube. And in her interviews, she shares a lot of what is in her book. She shares a lot about how women's bodies work differently than men. And a lot of these fad diets that we hear about and these fad fitness trends, all the data is based on men's bodies. And I just learned so much from listening to her. So once I learned a lot from her, I knew I wanted to go into strength training. I did not just jump right in and start doing weights. I went and I talked to a trainer. I told him all the things I was concerned about. I was concerned about squatting and my knees buckling out from under me. I was worried about pulling muscles and being sore and all these things. And if you find a good trainer, they will come up with modified exercises for you. So I would say probably if you're just interested in what I did for the physical, I recommend you listen to some interviews by Stacy Sims and then take what you learn and talk to a trainer before you just start picking up weights. But between her and my trainer, I slowly learned how to do strength training, and it was slow. So I worked with him for 4 months so that I can now do exercises here at the house if I want to. Okay, food. I know a lot of you are interested in this. The food research that I did also led me to, I think you guys have heard of Rick Warren, who did The Purpose-Driven Life, and he also came up with this with a few other resources, something called the Daniel Plan. I basically, at the beginning of this year, did this. They have a 40-day challenge in this book, and I did a version of that. I would say what I did was much more strict because I was also cutting out some foods to do some other testing. I did work with my general practitioner. We had done blood work, and I wanted to see how just food changed my blood work, and it was just amazing. So I am actually planning to do this 40-day plan again in a couple of weeks to finish out June and go into July. It's the challenge that I want to give myself for the summer. So if anybody's interested, let me know. If you're interested in just seeing what I'm doing, I could do a vlog and share with you how things are going. All right, now I'm going to jump into some of the mental. So back in September, I had been into this challenge for a few months, and I think I shared with you I joined a small group through church, and we read this book called Get Out of Your Head by Jeannie Allen. Now, I don't have that with me. I'll pop a picture or something up here. But that was a really good kind of modern take on faith and mental illness, if you will. It reminded me a lot. Back in the day, I used to read a lot of Joyce Meyers. So if you remember the 90s and you read like Battlefield of the Mind, it was kind of along those lines, but a little more modern take. If you don't want to look at the book, Jeannie Allen has a podcast. You can find her on YouTube. So there's different ways if you just kind of want to know some of the things she talks about in that book. But that kind of helped me with the ruminating thoughts that I told you guys I was dealing with. On a secular level, the book, and I've shared this in some previous videos, I'm incredibly interested in the brain and how it works. I am a scientist by trade. I mean, I'm a chemical engineer. I've worked around scientists a big part of my life. I have scientists in my family. I'm surrounded by people that want to try to understand how things work. And I've shared this before, but this is The Master and His Emissary, and this is by Ian McGilchrist, who's done a lot of recent work on how our brains work. This is like really heavy, really thick, very scientific. Once again, I don't necessarily recommend that you get this big chunky book. You can just watch interviews of Ian McGilchrist on YouTube. There's tons of them, and he gives an overview in layman's terms of some of his findings on how our brains work. So anyway, I loved all that. I absolutely loved it. So truly on the spiritual side, I am I'm really into apologetics. So a lot of these references are going to lean into that apologetics vein, if you will. So this might not be everyone's cup of tea, but you can't go wrong with Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. If you've never read this, I highly recommend if you have a lot of questions. The other thing that really, I love the story of J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and the Inklings in Oxford back in the day. I love the idea of these very highly educated men who fought in wars and dealt in a time of, back then they had plagues, they had wars, they had crazy people leading countries and doing bizarre things. I mean, they had to question what on earth is happening in our world. And I'm very much a fan of J.R.R. Tolkien and the story of his relationship with C.S. Lewis. And one of my favorite poems is called Mythiopium, if I'm saying that right. I read it years ago, and it was written by J.R.R. Tolkien to C.S. Lewis, because C.S. Lewis for a long time was an atheist, and Tolkien was a Christian. And Tolkien has this beautiful view on just his faith and storytelling and beauty, and how he dealt with kind of the horrors of the world. Not only, you can find this poem in this book, it's called Tree and Leaf. But you can find the poem online. I think it's beautiful. And then there's also a Tolkien movie that came out in the past year that we watched, I think on Prime. I can't remember if it was, but it's called Tolkien. And that is just such a beautiful movie if you're a fan of like Lord of the Rings. Another Christian writer that I enjoyed is a young girl named Sarah Clarkson. She is the daughter of Sally Clarkson. I've talked a lot about Sally Clarkson in a lot of my what I'm reading type videos, but the Clarkson family are well known in the homeschooling community, and they are Christian, and they've held a lot of conferences, and they're so good at words and explaining things and making things very beautiful, having intelligent conversation. I can't get enough of reading their things. But the oldest daughter, Sarah, did struggle a lot with her faith, and just trying to understand sort of the bad things that happen in the world. I mean, who wouldn't question that? She is a Oxford scholar, graduate. I think she has a PhD. I'm not sure. But she's very well educated and lives in Oxford. And this is beautifully written. It's called This Beautiful Truth. The first half discusses kind of her struggles with faith, living in a fallen world, if you will. And then the second half is just absolutely beautiful. I don't want to spoil it for you, but this is a nonfiction. And speaking of the Clarkson family, I think I've shared a lot of Sally Clarkson books. This is for those of you who are like me and love to entertain and host and open up your house to friends. She wrote this book called Tea Time Discipleship, and it just really inspired me to start spending more time with friends, opening up the house, that sort of thing, which was a huge part of my transformation. So Tea Time Discipleship was a really inspirational book for me last year. In the second half of my year, my small group also read Now and Not Yet by Ruth Chou Simmons. And then I just have a few more books to share along the lines of apologetics and just more, I guess, for lack of a better term, combining your intellectual thoughts with faith. This is a little old school. This is Francis Schaeffer, How Should We Then Live? I've had this book for probably 20 years and tried to read it several times, but I read it for the first time. I was able to read it through, and it totally made sense all of a sudden. I really enjoyed this. This is also, there's an old YouTube series. It's based on, like, I think a 70s documentary that Francis Schaeffer did, but you can find all the videos, but it's very interesting. Just along the lines of the Ian McGilchrist, Master and His Emissary, and Western thinking and all of that, and history. So if you're a history buff and you want to stretch your mind a little bit, this is Francis Schaeffer. If you don't know about Francis Schaeffer, he was a Presbyterian minister back in the 60s, and he took his family to Switzerland and created these, like, I guess he created something like along the lines of hostels, if you will, and he set up his family in the Alps, and he would, all these students, you know, were all around going to school, and he would open up his home, they would open up their home and host a lot of students back in the day, and they encouraged very intelligent conversation. So there was a very intentional thing that they did. They would sit down and have tea, and they would sit down and have dinners together and encourage conversation that made you think and debate, but in a respectful way. So, you know, he hosted people from all over the world, great minds. I've always been very much inspired by that. I thought it was so cool. And of course, anybody that encourages sitting around, drinking tea, eating food, and intelligent, thoughtful conversation, yeah, I'm all for it. But the secret behind part of his success was his wife, Edith Schaeffer. She was absolutely known for her amazing hospitality and her gentle spirit and her art and her creativity and making any place that they were staying in a home. And she has several books. So the place that they created is called L'Abri, and there's a book that she wrote that's kind of the history of L'Abri. And this meant a lot to me because one of the first guests, she was putting up a lot to faith, and they weren't sure if they were supposed to do this kind of hostel, opening up their home and all of that stuff. And the reason this means a lot to me because she shares in here the first visitors that showed up at the hostel, and there were 2 ladies from Lakeland, Florida, and I live in Lakeland, so this was really cool. I enjoyed this very much. And then she also just has a lovely, it's called The Hidden Art of Homemaking. And I know that sounds a little old-fashioned, but it is creative ideas for enriching everyday life. And this is just the sweetest thing. And I enjoyed this very much. And lastly, it's not a book, but it's a professor at Oxford that inspires me very much. His name is John Lennox. He's everywhere. He has an organization in Oxford that is for Christian apologetics, and he has some amazing interviews. He's known for debating Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, and I've read their books too. And I just think he is just an impressive gentleman, and he loves math, and I love math. So I really resonated with his point of view and his ability to debate very well and remain calm. So if you'd like to see more of him, you can find him all over YouTube, and on my list of resources on my blog, I list the most popular video that I think it was made about 10 years ago, and he's in Oxford where they do all the debating. I don't know if you've ever watched any Oxford debates, but they're available online and they're kind of fun. So I hope this helps. Like I said, I tried to go ahead and give you the food and the fitness up front. If you're still hanging with me this far in the video, you probably know a lot of this is faith-based, but that's just what worked for me. And I hope that this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please leave them below. And like I said, if you would like to know more about the Daniel Plan 40-day challenge that I will be doing this summer, I'm just kind of repeating what I did in January to reset some things. Let me know in the comments, and if you'd like for me to share any more information about that. Hope this helps, and I'll see you in the next video.